Inside the mansion, the millionaire was in his element, surrounded by gold, velvet, and crystal chandeliers that sparkled with the morning sunlight. Every corner of the room reflected his wealth, a world he had built brick by brick, deal by deal, and laugh by laugh. As he sipped from a glass of the finest wine, he leaned back in his massive leather chair, a smirk playing on his lips. The news of the claimant had reached him earlier in the day, and at first, he had laughed, imagining a timid, nervous person stumbling through his gates, thinking they could somehow claim what was his. What foolishness, he muttered, swirling the wine in his glass. All of this, mine, and yet someone dares to say it isn't. The millionaire loved power, not just the money, but the fear and respect it commanded. He had spent decades making sure everyone in the city knew his name, and no one, not even the council, could challenge him, or so he believed. His laughter echoed through the high-ceilinged hallways, bouncing off marble and gold, a sound meant to intimidate, to show the world that no one could touch him. Outside, his advisors and sycophants shuffled nervously, exchanging glances. They had learned long ago that questioning him was pointless, and yet the news of the claimant had stirred unease among them. They watched the millionaire laugh, a laugh so full of confidence it almost seemed unstoppable, yet the tiniest shadow of worry flickered behind his eyes. He moved from room to room, each more lavish than the last, greeting guests with charm, though secretly mocking the idea that anyone could interfere with his fortune. They think they can challenge me, he whispered to one of his assistants. Let them try, they'll find it impossible. His words were bold, but his hands tightened briefly on the edge of the table, betraying the first hint of doubt. The claimant, he reasoned, must be inexperienced, unprepared, and naive. For decades, he had built an empire, and no casual visitor could ever match the cunning it required. As the day passed, he hosted a small gathering of close friends, businessmen, and lawyers, boasting of his successes and the security of his wealth. Every anecdote, every laugh, was a subtle display of power, meant to remind everyone that he was untouchable. One friend asked about the claimant, and he laughed heartily. Oh, that. I hardly take it seriously, he said, swirling the wine. It's like a child demanding the sun, impossible and laughable. The room joined in laughter, everyone reinforcing the millionaire's confidence. Yet even in their smiles, the tension was growing. They all sensed the undercurrent, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this time, the impossible could happen. Behind the laughter, the millionaire began to imagine the claimant, small, nervous, standing at the gates, trying to make their case. His imagination painted them timid, unsure, lacking the strength to challenge his authority. And yet, in the back of his mind, a question started to form, tiny but persistent. What if? He quickly pushed it away, almost angrily, refusing to let even a thought of doubt take root. For him, confidence was a shield, and arrogance a weapon. Without them, he feared, everything could crumble. By evening, the mansion was alive with music and conversation, a celebration of wealth and influence. The millionaire moved through the crowd, greeting guests with charm, laughing at jokes, making deals behind closed doors, all while maintaining the image of untouchable dominance. And yet, in quiet moments when he stood alone, the slightest unease returned. A whisper of the possibility that the claimant's arrival could disrupt everything he had built. He poured another glass of wine, holding it tightly, telling himself that nothing could change, that the empire was secure, and that his laughter, rich and deep, was the final word. Little did he know, the claimant was closer than he imagined, readying themselves for the first step of a journey that would challenge his confidence, shake his arrogance, and reveal that wealth, no matter how immense, could never protect against the truth. That evening, the millionaire laughed more loudly than ever, believing he was untouchable, unaware that the council, the evidence, and the claimant's determination were all quietly closing in, setting the stage for a confrontation that would be remembered for years, a moment where arrogance would meet justice in a way no one could have predicted. The claimant knew that arriving at the mansion was only the first step. The real test was the council, a powerful and respected body that held the authority to confirm or deny claims of inheritance. For decades, the council had been the final word in disputes, their decisions absolute, and their judgments fair. The claimant approached the council chambers with a mixture of respect and determination, each step echoing softly on the polished stone floor. The building itself was impressive, old, and grand, with tall pillars and intricate carvings that told stories of justice and wisdom over centuries. Inside, the air was filled with quiet anticipation, as clerks and advisors prepared documents and reviewed old records, each aware that a unique case was about to unfold. The claimant entered the chamber, holding the meticulously prepared documents. Each paper represented months of effort, legal research, testimonies from witnesses, historical records, and proof of promises made decades ago. As they walked to the front, a hush fell over the room, all eyes turning toward this determined newcomer. The council members, a group of older and experienced individuals, observed closely. Their expressions calm but curious. They had seen countless claims over the years. But something about this one, perhaps the courage, the quiet confidence, or the precise preparation, made them lean forward in interest. The head of the council, a stern yet fair woman known for her sharp mind, looked at the claimant carefully, assessing their demeanor. "State your name and your claim," she said, her voice steady but carrying authority. The claimant's voice, clear and firm, echoed slightly in the high-ceilinged room. "I am here to claim my legacy, what rightfully belongs to me, based on the promises and legal agreements made years ago." Murmurs ran through the chamber, some council members exchanging brief glances, intrigued by the unusual phrasing and boldness. The claimant began presenting the evidence, explaining every document, every signature, every overlooked detail that pointed to their rightful inheritance. The council listened intently, occasionally asking questions to clarify timelines or legal points. Each answer the claimant gave was confident and precise, revealing a depth of preparation and dedication that impressed even the most skeptical members. Meanwhile, scribes hurriedly recorded every word, understanding that this claim could make history, not just a dispute over money, but a story of courage, persistence, and truth finally standing before power. Outside the chamber, the millionaire's laughter still echoed in his mansion, but here, the council represented something different: impartiality, wisdom, and authority. Unlike the millionaire, no amount of wealth or arrogance could influence their decision. The claimant, aware of this, felt both relief and pressure, knowing that every word and every piece of evidence mattered. The air seemed heavier with anticipation, as if the room itself understood the importance of what was about to unfold. Hours passed as the council carefully reviewed each document, discussing privately in low voices, their eyes scanning for inconsistencies or hidden truths. The claimant waited patiently, understanding that patience was as much a weapon as preparation. The tension in the chamber grew, a quiet drama that only those who had witnessed real justice could feel. Outside, servants and onlookers whispered rumors of the claimant's courage, sensing that this was not just another claim, but a test of integrity and destiny. Finally, the council members returned to their seats, the room falling silent once more. The head of the council looked at the claimant with a slight nod, a signal that the investigation had taken their claim seriously. "We have reviewed the evidence and examined the facts," she began, her voice carrying a weight that made even the most confident person pause. The claimant stood tall, heart steady but racing, ready for the moment that could change everything. This was the stage where truth would meet authority, where preparation would confront skepticism, and where the legacy they sought would either be confirmed or denied. As the claimant glanced around the room, they noticed subtle expressions: curiosity, surprise, respect. From the council members, each face told a story, hinting that the case was unusual, complex, and undeniably compelling. And for the first time, the claimant felt a quiet hope, a sense that justice might finally prevail, that despite the millionaire's laughter, despite the years of doubt and struggle, the council would see the truth and confirm what was rightfully theirs. Once the council had heard the claimant's initial statement, the real work began. Investigation was not a mere formality, it was a careful, detailed examination of history, promises, and evidence. The council's chambers transformed into a hive of activity, clerks and legal advisors sifting through ancient documents, letters, and contracts. Each parchment seemed to whisper secrets long forgotten, edges yellowed with age, ink faded but legible, each signature and stamp holding the weight of decades. Some documents were easy to read, while others required careful comparison, legal expertise, and historical context. The claimant watched silently, providing clarifications and explanations whenever requested. Their calm and precise demeanor made it clear that this was more than a simple claim, it was a pursuit of truth, and they were ready to stand by every word. The council divided the work into sections, with some members examining the original contracts, others cross-checking signatures, and a few investigating witness accounts. Every step uncovered details that had been overlooked or hidden for years. Names of long-departed lawyers, old assistants, and family members appeared in faded ink, each connection adding weight to the claimant's case. The millionaire, still unaware of the depth of the council's investigation, continued his day with the same arrogant confidence, laughing at what he considered a minor inconvenience. Yet, the council's thoroughness meant that the arrogance of wealth could not protect him. As days passed, the investigation began to reveal surprising facts. The claimant had discovered letters hidden in old family archives, notes from the millionaire's predecessors, and even verbal agreements remembered by witnesses who had long retired. Each piece of evidence was meticulously verified, ensuring no false claims could weaken the case. Some of the documents contradicted the millionaire's public statements, revealing promises made in secrecy, obligations that had been forgotten or deliberately ignored. The council members exchanged glances, murmuring quietly to one another, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and admiration for the claimant's persistence and preparation. The claimant, despite their nerves, remained composed, answering every question with clarity. The council tested them carefully, probing for inconsistencies, challenging interpretations, yet the claimant remained confident. Each response demonstrated not only knowledge but integrity, showing that this was not a frivolous attempt but a genuine claim backed by evidence and history. Meanwhile, the atmosphere outside the council chambers buzzed with rumors, servants and locals whispering about the unusual case. Some speculated on the millionaire's possible reactions, others marveled at the claimant's courage. No one had ever seen someone challenge the millionaire so openly and with such preparation. One council member, a seasoned man known for his keen eye and no-nonsense approach, discovered a document that seemed almost too perfect, an old contract that directly supported the claimant's argument. The paper had survived decades of neglect. Hidden in a dusty box in the council archives, its authenticity was confirmed through careful examination, and suddenly, the investigation gained undeniable momentum. Another member began calling witnesses who remembered private discussions, people who had once worked closely with the millionaire. Their testimonies painted a clear picture. Promises had been made, commitments had been acknowledged, and yet the millionaire had ignored them. The claimant felt a quiet thrill as the investigation progressed. Each revelation was a step closer to justice, each confirmation a blow to the millionaire's arrogance. They had known it would not be easy, but the council's thorough and impartial work validated their years of effort and preparation. Every document and witness added weight, turning what seemed like a simple claim into an undeniable truth. As the council prepared to compile their findings, the tension in the room was palpable. Even the most experienced members knew this case was extraordinary, a rare moment when courage, persistence, and truth intersected to challenge wealth and power. By the end of the investigation, the council had assembled a comprehensive record, every detail examined, every claim verified. The claimant's legacy was no longer a question of opinion but a matter of documented history. It was a slow and deliberate process, but one that promised justice. The millionaire, if he could see it now, would realize that arrogance and laughter could not stand against careful examination, integrity, and persistence. And as the claimant stepped back from the council's attention, there was a quiet sense of anticipation, knowing that the next step would bring the confrontation that could change everything. As the investigation continued, the claimant realized they were not alone in their quest. There were people who remembered the promises long forgotten, individuals who had quietly witnessed the events that no one else seemed to recall. These were former employees, old family friends, and distant relatives, each holding pieces of a puzzle that could turn the tide in the claimant's favor. One by one, they came forward, cautiously at first, unsure whether their voices would truly matter, but the claimant greeted them with calm assurance, explaining that every detail they remembered could make a difference, that courage was contagious, and slowly, the hesitant whispers turned into confident testimonies. The first ally was an elderly housekeeper, who had worked in the millionaire's family for decades. She remembered late-night conversations, promises whispered in private, and instructions from the millionaire's predecessor that had been ignored by the current head of the family. Her recollection was vivid, precise, and unwavering, providing the council with insight that no document could convey. As she spoke, the council members listened closely, scribes recording every word, their surprise evident as she recounted the truth that had been buried beneath wealth and arrogance. Next came a former lawyer who had handled family estates years ago. His office had been closed for decades, yet he had kept meticulous notes and letters, some hidden in dusty drawers. When asked, he presented documents showing agreements, signatures, and commitments that directly supported the claimant's position. The council members exchanged glances, their interest growing. Each revelation chipped away at the illusion of the millionaire's untouchable wealth. The claimant watched quietly, grateful but determined to remain composed, understanding that patience and humility were as important as courage. Another key ally was a distant relative, a quiet observer who had always respected the claimant's dedication. They had seen the claimant's unwavering commitment over the years, the endless research, the sacrifices, and they brought forth old letters and family journals that had been ignored or dismissed by the millionaire. Each letter, each recollection, revealed a story of forgotten promises, of commitments made with honor, and of the arrogance that had dismissed them. These allies, who seemed insignificant at first, became the strongest pillars of support, proving that truth often finds its way through unexpected channels. As the council reviewed these testimonies, the investigation gained new momentum. What had seemed like a simple claim was turning into a compelling case, backed not only by documents but by living memories and witnesses who could testify to the reality of the promises. Even the claimant, who had prepared for years, was surprised by the depth of these revelations. The millionaire, still laughing in his mansion, remained unaware that his empire was facing scrutiny from voices he had long ignored. The council carefully cross-checked every testimony with the documents, comparing dates, signatures, and events. Each ally's account confirmed and strengthened the claimant's position, creating a tapestry of evidence that was both factual and emotional. The combination of living witnesses and written proof made the claim nearly impossible to ignore. For the first time, the claimant felt a quiet surge of hope, a sense that justice was not only possible but imminent. Meanwhile, the millionaire continued his lavish routines, unaware that each story told by the claimant's allies was chipping away at his confidence. Every laugh he offered in the halls of his mansion contrasted sharply with the growing weight of evidence forming in the council chambers. The walls of wealth could not protect him from the truth, and soon, he would have to confront not just a claimant but a network of people who knew, remembered, and were willing to speak. By the end of the week, the claimant had assembled a small army of unexpected allies, each contributing their piece to the puzzle. The council now had a complete picture, a blend of historical records, eyewitness accounts, and irrefutable proof. The claimant stood quietly, letting the evidence speak for itself, knowing that the combined force of truth and support would soon leave the millionaire with no option but to face reality. It was a moment that marked a turning point, where courage met collaboration, where persistence met loyalty, and where the underestimated could challenge the powerful. As the council prepared to finalize the findings, the claimant took a deep breath, understanding that the allies' support was not just helpful, it was essential. Their testimonies had transformed a legal battle into a story of justice, courage, and truth, and somewhere, in the mansion far away, the millionaire's laughter would soon meet its first real test. The day of the formal hearing finally arrived, and the atmosphere was tense, charged with anticipation that seemed to hang in the air like a storm waiting to break. The claimant entered the grand chamber with calm determination, documents in hand, evidence neatly organized, and allies quietly supporting them from the sidelines. The council members, dressed in their traditional robes, looked on with impartial yet piercing eyes, their expressions revealing nothing but attentiveness. Across the city, the millionaire sat in his office, still confident, still laughing, unaware that the claimant's preparation and the testimonies of unexpected allies had already begun to chip away at the foundation of his arrogance. The council called the millionaire to appear, and he entered with his usual swagger, a charming smile on his face, confident that this was just another formality, another scene in which he would emerge unchallenged. "So, we meet at last," he said, his voice rich and full, "and yet I see no reason for concern." He glanced at the claimant with a dismissive smirk, expecting nervousness, hesitation, maybe even a stumble in their words. But the claimant met his gaze without fear, standing tall and composed, ready to face not only the millionaire's arrogance but the weight of decades of truth. The council began by reviewing the claimant's evidence, document by document, each signature, each letter, each testimony laid out with precision. The millionaire watched carefully, at first amused, then increasingly alert, as the counsel referenced letters he had long forgotten, notes from witnesses who remembered conversations he thought were private, and documents that contradicted his public claims. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, almost imperceptible, but enough to reveal that his confidence was no longer unshakable. The claimant calmly presented each testimony from the unexpected allies, the elderly housekeeper, the retired lawyer, the distant relative, recounting details that had been ignored or dismissed for years. Each account reinforced the others, creating a chain of undeniable truth. The millionaire tried to interrupt at one point, scoffing at the witnesses, mocking their recollections, yet the counsel's chair raised a hand. Silencing him immediately. "Let the record speak," she said, her voice firm, and the millionaire realized that here, in this chamber, wealth and influence could not bend the rules. As the hearing progressed, small cracks appeared in the millionaire's confidence, a nervous glance here, a forced smile there, subtle signs of unease that he had never shown before. He began to question, perhaps for the first time, whether his laughter and arrogance had blinded him to the reality of the claimant's case. Each document presented, each witness account read, was a mirror reflecting not what he wanted to see, but the truth he had long ignored. The claimant's calm poise only heightened the tension, showing that courage and preparation could match, and even surpass, the force of wealth. The counsel asked pointed questions, testing the millionaire's knowledge of past agreements, challenging inconsistencies in his recollections. The millionaire struggled, fumbling at times, unable to dismiss the evidence as easily as he had imagined. He laughed occasionally, trying to maintain composure, yet the laughter sounded hollow, echoing against the walls with a sense of desperation. Meanwhile, the claimant answered every challenge with clarity, detail, and confidence, never raising their voice, never showing anger, only determination, patience, and truth. By mid-afternoon, the room had changed subtly, the tension almost tangible. The counsel's impartiality meant that nothing could sway their judgment except evidence, and the evidence overwhelmingly supported the claimant. The millionaire began to feel the weight of realization pressing against him, the arrogance that had once been his shield now feeling fragile. Every confident thought he had nurtured for decades was being questioned, every assumption challenged. Finally, the counsel paused to review all findings collectively, murmuring quietly among themselves, while the claimant and the millionaire waited, each in their own mental state, one confident but nervous, the other confident but slowly unraveling. In that pause, the millionaire's mind raced, memories of promises he had ignored, letters he had dismissed, and warnings he had laughed at flooded him. Doubt settled in like an uninvited guest, quiet but insistent, forcing him to confront a truth he had never wanted to face. As the counsel reconvened, the claimant stood ready, allies behind them, the evidence presented with precision. The millionaire's once laughing eyes now revealed uncertainty, a flicker of fear, and an awareness that this confrontation was far from ordinary. It was a collision of arrogance and truth, wealth and justice, preparation and denial, and the stage was set for a revelation that would change everything. The claimant's courage had met the millionaire's confidence head-on, and for the first time, doubt had taken root in a man who had never known it. The chamber was silent as the counsel prepared to deliver its decision. A weighty hush filled the room, as if every breath, every heartbeat, was holding in anticipation. The claimant stood tall, calm but tense, papers neatly stacked before them, allies quietly watching from the side, their eyes reflected hope and determination, ready to see the truth finally acknowledged. Across the room, the millionaire's confidence had transformed into visible unease. The smirk that had once dominated his face was gone, replaced by a rigid mask of uncertainty, his mind racing through decades of decisions, promises, and forgotten agreements. The head of the council, her eyes steady and voice deliberate, began to speak. After careful review of all evidence, testimonies, and historical records, the council has reached a decision. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The room seemed to hold its collective breath, all eyes on the claimant and the millionaire, waiting for the moment that would change everything. The claimant's heart pounded, yet their expression remained composed, for they had prepared for this moment. For years, the allies behind them straightened, leaning slightly forward, sensing the importance of the announcement. "We find that the claimant's claim is legitimate," the counsel continued. "The evidence demonstrates a clear right to the legacy, confirmed by both historical documents and witness testimonies. A ripple of reaction swept through the chamber, whispers of surprise, admiration, and disbelief moving quietly among the onlookers. The claimant exhaled slowly, a sense of relief and triumph washing over them. Years of effort and persistence now recognized. Their eyes met the council's head with gratitude, acknowledging the fairness and thoroughness of the process. The millionaire's reaction was immediate, though he tried to hide it. His face turned pale, lips pressing tightly together, eyes widening in disbelief. The laughter that had once been his armor disappeared, replaced by a stunned silence. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came, his arrogance and confidence crushed beneath the weight of undeniable truth. For the first time, he felt powerless. And the enormity of what he had ignored for decades hit him with full force. Every corner of his mansion, every ounce of wealth, every influence he had wielded, suddenly seemed insignificant. The claimant stepped forward, not triumphantly, but with quiet dignity, acknowledging the council's ruling and the truth it confirmed. This was not about humiliation, not about revenge, but about justice, about rights recognized, and promises honored. The allies behind the claimant exchanged subtle nods, their support having helped turn the tide. Each witness had contributed, each document had mattered, and now, the reality of the inheritance was finally acknowledged. The council continued to outline the specifics of the legacy, detailing what belonged to the claimant, and the terms under which it would be transferred. Every clause, every signature, every acknowledgement made the millionaire's shock deeper. He realized that for all his power and wealth, he had overlooked the simplest principle: truth cannot be ignored forever. The claimant had combined patience, preparation, and courage to claim what was theirs, and even the millionaire's arrogance could not prevent justice from prevailing. In that moment, the millionaire experienced a mixture of emotions: regret, disbelief, and an unexpected humility. The laughter he had relied on as a shield now felt hollow, a memory of confidence that had been misplaced. The council's decision had exposed not just the truth of the inheritance, but the truth about arrogance, about assuming power could protect one from accountability. The claimant, though victorious, felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that this moment was not just personal triumph, but a testament to persistence, courage, and the power of standing up for what is right. Outside the chamber, word of the decision began to spread, murmurs growing into conversations, and conversations into astonishment. People spoke of the claimant's bravery, of the council's fairness, and of the millionaire's humbled reaction. The story of the ruling would be remembered for years, a tale of truth prevailing over arrogance, of justice outlasting wealth, and of courage meeting challenge with unshakable determination. As the claimant finally took possession of the legacy, a quiet satisfaction settled over them. The journey had been long, challenging, and at times exhausting, but the truth had emerged victorious. The millionaire, meanwhile, retreated into his mansion, reflective and humbled, aware that wealth alone could never protect him from consequences, and that arrogance could not withstand the power of preparation, persistence, and honesty. The revelation was complete, dramatic, and transformative, leaving a lasting mark on everyone involved. It was a bright morning when the claimant arrived in the city, a figure carrying both determination and a quiet tension that could be felt in every step. Dressed modestly but with a certain confidence, they walked through the bustling streets, eyes fixed on the grand district where the millionaire lived. The city around them was alive with noise, people hurrying to their work, vendors shouting their wares, and children laughing in the distance. But the claimant's mind was focused entirely on the mansion at the end of the boulevard, the place that symbolized not just wealth but the secret that had drawn them here. As they approached the gates of the millionaire's estate, the walls towering high and the iron gates gleaming in the morning sun, a sense of awe mixed with a flicker of fear swept over them. The estate was everything the stories had promised: lush gardens, sparkling fountains, and a mansion that looked more like a palace than a home. Yet, the claimant reminded themselves why they were here: not for admiration, not for curiosity, but to claim what was rightfully theirs. A deep breath and a steady step forward carried them through the first of many obstacles. As the security guards at the gate paused to scrutinize the newcomer, their sharp eyes and professional expressions could intimidate anyone, but the claimant met their gaze calmly, handing over the documents that had been prepared months in advance, the papers that would prove their claim to the estate. Inside the mansion, the millionaire was already aware of the visitor, a man known for his wealth and arrogance. He lounged in his office with a glass of expensive wine, chuckling to himself as he imagined the absurdity of someone daring to challenge him, claim their legacy. He murmured, laughing so loudly that his assistants flinched, "What nonsense, this city is mine, everything in it is mine, who dares think otherwise?" His laughter, rich and full, filled the grand hallways, echoing off marble floors and gold-trimmed walls, yet, underneath that laughter, there was a tiny shadow of unease, a subtle twitch in his hand as he turned the wine glass slowly. Though he would never admit it, the news of the claimant had arrived at the perfect time, just when he had convinced himself that nothing could ever threaten his empire. The claimant, unaware of the millionaire's mockery, approached the front door of the mansion, which seemed to stretch higher than the tallest trees surrounding it. Each step closer made their heart beat faster, but it also strengthened their resolve. They remembered the stories told by family and old friends, whispers of promises made decades ago, and legal documents buried under piles of paperwork. These whispers had become their mission. And nothing, not guards, not wealth, not ridicule, could deter them from standing before the council and proving the truth. As the massive doors opened, the grandeur of the mansion left them momentarily speechless. Every corner seemed designed to impress, every wall lined with paintings and expensive artifacts, yet beneath all the beauty lay the real test, confronting the man who had everything and showing that destiny had its own plans. The claimant's thoughts briefly wandered to the journey that had brought them here, the long nights spent researching old records, the letters found tucked away in forgotten drawers, the endless consultations with lawyers and witnesses. It had not been easy, and many had warned them to give up, but persistence had become their strongest ally. The city, with all its noise and chaos, felt distant now, replaced by the silent challenge of the mansion, and the inevitable encounter with the millionaire. Meanwhile, the millionaire, sensing that the moment of confrontation was near, poured himself another glass of wine, trying to maintain his usual charm and arrogance. "They will arrive soon," he thought with a smirk, "and they will leave just as quickly, empty-handed and foolish." He waved a hand toward his secretary, signaling that he would not be disturbed, believing firmly that no one could ever match his cunning or fortune. But as the sunlight streamed through the large windows and touched the polished floors, there was an unspoken tension, a crack in his perfect world, that even he could not fully ignore. Finally, the claimant reached the inner courtyard, a space so vast it could have been a park. With every step, their confidence grew, a sense of justice mingling with nervous anticipation. They knew that this was more than a simple claim. It was a moment that could change lives, not only theirs but everyone involved. The guards moved aside as if sensing their determination, and the claimant stepped closer to the heart of the mansion, ready to face the millionaire and ready to reveal the truth. Little did either of them know that this encounter would set off a series of events neither could predict, a confrontation that would test courage, truth, and the power of destiny. The council had spoken, the ruling was final, and the chamber that had been tense and silent now seemed to exhale. The claimant stood quietly, letting the significance of the moment settle in, years of preparation, effort, and courage culminating in the acknowledgement of their legacy. Around them, allies who had supported the journey shared subtle smiles and glances, a silent celebration of truth, patience, and persistence. It was a moment of justice realized, but also a moment of reflection, a recognition that the journey had changed more than just ownership of wealth. The claimant walked slowly out of the council chambers, the weight of the past lifting with each step, memories of long nights spent researching old documents, traveling to forgotten archives, and convincing hesitant witnesses came rushing back. Each struggle, each setback, had been worth it, not for revenge or gain, but for the satisfaction of seeing what was rightfully theirs acknowledged. Every obstacle had been a test of resolve, and they had emerged not only victorious but stronger, more confident, and more aware of the value of patience and integrity. The millionaire, meanwhile, returned to his mansion, his usual opulence seeming suddenly hollow. The laughter that had once filled the halls was gone, replaced by quiet contemplation. He walked through rooms filled with treasures, paintings, and gold, yet none of it could shield him from the realization that arrogance had blinded him. The council's decision had shattered his certainty, forcing him to confront a truth he had avoided for decades, that wealth alone could never protect him from accountability, and that dismissing promises and history had consequences far greater than he had imagined. In the days following the ruling, the city buzzed with discussion, people intrigued by the claimant's courage and the council's careful judgment. Stories were shared about the meticulous preparation, the unexpected allies, and the millionaire's humbled reaction, it became clear that this was more than just an inheritance dispute, but a tale of justice prevailing over arrogance, truth over neglect, and courage over complacency. The claimant, while pleased, remained humble, understanding that the legacy carried responsibility as well as privilege. It was not simply a matter of wealth, but a matter of honor, integrity, and preserving what had been entrusted to them. The claimant began to take steps to manage the inheritance responsibly, ensuring that the legacy would not only serve personal interests but also honor the history and promises associated with it. They consulted with advisors, connected with family members, and listened carefully to the counsel of those who had supported them. Every decision reflected the patience, care, and thoughtfulness that had defined their journey from the start, unlike the millionaire, whose decisions had been driven by pride and impatience. The claimant's actions were deliberate and respectful, aimed at building trust, respect, and lasting impact. The millionaire, in turn, began a quiet process of reflection, a journey that was perhaps even more significant than the legal outcome. For the first time, he understood the value of humility, of listening, and of acknowledging mistakes. His vast wealth could not undo what had been ignored, but it could now support lessons learned and change in character. He considered reaching out, perhaps to reconcile, perhaps to understand, but above all to recognize that truth had prevailed, and that arrogance had limits. A subtle shift had occurred in him, a recognition that power and influence must be tempered by responsibility and awareness. The city, the council, and even distant observers marveled at the story, its twists and turns providing lessons far beyond a single inheritance. It became a tale of courage meeting challenge, of careful preparation confronting arrogance, and of the persistence of truth despite obstacles. The claimant's journey had inspired others to stand up for what was right, to prepare carefully, and to seek justice with patience and integrity. The millionaire's humbled reaction served as a reminder that no amount of wealth could substitute for honesty, respect, and awareness of consequences. As the days turned into weeks, the claimant continued to honor the legacy, embracing responsibility with grace and humility. Each decision, each step forward, reinforced the importance of persistence, preparation, and courage. The millionaire, observing from a distance, remained reflective, a man transformed not by the loss itself, but by the recognition of his own flaws. The story, now complete, left a lasting impression on everyone involved, a testament to the power of truth, the value of patience, and the inevitability of justice. In the end, the legacy was not only claimed but respected, not only acknowledged but understood, and the journey itself became a symbol of courage, integrity, and reflection.